So here is the first podcast of the new year in the new studio, and my guest is my good friend, Craig Catanzarite. This is going to be an incredible, honest conversation on real estate investing. I don't know anyone personally that has done as much as you have, as far as you've had rentals, you have done flips, you have done new construction, and recently you have been started getting into Airbnb. So I cannot wait to unpack. I have so many questions for you. It'll be interesting, Craig.
I'll try to keep it entertaining, and very impressive studio here. You got some nice lights, professional staff, some expensive microphones.
So where'd you grow up?
Brunswick, Ohio. Born in Pittsburgh, but moved to Brunswick when I was 7. After I graduated from college, I moved back home, got my master's at BW, and I think I moved out. I was 26, 27. Moved to Westlake. A guy that I went to school with there, same situation. He said, hey, there's this apartment complex with a pool and a hot tub, and that's how I ended up in Westlake. And
which one were you living in?
Sturbridge.
And I was at the Remington. How funny is that?
Yeah, you were. I knew you lived at the place next door. I didn't know you lived in Remington.
I was at
a
the
very
Remington.
Similar setup.
Yeah, it was great.
Good group. Everybody was young. You know, you'd go on Thursday nights, you'd go to Lakewood, and then on the weekends to the flats.
Yeah.
And nurse your hangover at the pool on Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday. And
yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a different time. The flats. Had you been down to the flats?
Recently?
Yes.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's nice.
It's very nice.
It's too nice.
It's very nice.
It lost that old world, that old charm.
Yeah, I didn't see any like huge rats running the streets.
No,
but it's so nice now. But I agree. The layout's different. It's so all one area on the East Bank is that just beautiful new area that everything is around that boardwalk. The way I recall it, it was just so spread out when we were there. Like, you know, you had at the one end was the beach club.
Well, Fagan's was at the very end.
Was it Fagan's at the very end?
Yeah,
You're right. Fagan's,
then Beach
then
Club.
Beach Club.
Yeah.
So there was that. Then you had let's keep thinking. You had Fagan's,
The Poos, River's Edge,
where the basement, which was. Did you ever hang out at the basement?
Yeah, that was at the tail end of my flats career. But the basement was a good spot. It was like a couple levels.
Yes.
There was one summer. There was one place called it had live music. Was it not the Palladium? Headliners.
Was it Headliners? Headliners. There was another place called the Odeon down there.
That was across the street. Yes.
And then you had the whole. What was it? The
Jimmy's.
Bank?
There was another place. Jimmy's.
I remember Jimmy's.
Jimmy's, yeah.
But the only thing that's really done, the Flatiron's still there.
Harbor Inn.
Harbor Inn is still there. That's right. I just saw that.
Yeah.
Shooters is still there.
But there was some like dance, some crappy dance club.
It was called Coconuts. Which now it's the Music Box Supper Club. I don't know anything about it, but they get live acts in there. And then they have, like, you can go there, have dinner. I think they have buffet. I don't know if it's sit down or buffets, but I guess they get some good acts there.
Yeah, I've heard some good things.
But we have been recently down there. We went to Sora. Fantastic.
Yeah, I like Lindy's Lake House.
Lindy's Lake House
is a great spot in the summer. You're right there on the water. And then what's the place? It's got an elevated deck. It overlooks the river there. It's something cats, not stray cats or.
I know what you're talking.
Anyways, it's a great spot
it's
too.
Awesome.
But it's everything's new different and nice and expensive. Not like
When was that?
It had a good run, probably from 84 to 94. There was probably a good strong 10 years. A couple people drowned trying to
remember
swim
that.
across the river. You know, you had that water taxi, Holy Moses water taxi
Yeah.
you could take.
Yeah. Do you remember? I think it was called Riverfest.
That was the best.
It was the
And they
greatest.
shut the streets down.
2 days, Friday, Saturday,
100,000 people easy.
easy.
The best time you could walk down the streets.
Open
with beers.
container.
Yep, that was
And
the best.
it was something else. I mean, I don't know why it went away.
It went away because, well, at the tail end of the, probably mid 90s, there started to be, there were some muggings and, it got a little rough down there.
But in its infinite stage, I don't think there was a
No better place.
to be.
And everybody went there. Now, kids, we still went to Lakewood. It was only on Thursdays. You didn't spend Friday and Saturday in Lakewood. You went downtown. And then you didn't, there was no really good local bars to go to. I mean, in Brunswick, we had a couple. But, when I moved to Westlake, there was what's now Cabin Club was Major League.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, it was. They had like lunch tables in there, and it was a bad bar. And there was one in the atrium too. What was that called?
Yeah, it
Glass
had
Garden or something.
The Glass Garden was a restaurant, but there was a bar in there that had like trophy animals. Do you remember that? I think it was a club. There were trophy animals all over the place. Now I'm going to have to look this up.
Yeah.
There was the atrium, but there was also this club there.
Getty's was where Houlihan's is. You could go to Getty's.
Was great patio. Houlihan's had a great patio.
But that atrium, late night, would stop in there maybe for a nightcap, and if it wasn't too late, Al Bubba Baker was always in there, and he would always, great guy, always buy you a lemon drop, shot.
He was always out and having fun and was
good attitude,
great dude. Yeah. And then if you go back, we caught the beginning of the whole redevelopment of downtown, and when Jacobs Field opened. I don't know if there was a cooler place to be. And when was that? Late 90s?
94.
94. That's right. 1994.
94. And then that season got cut short. There was a strike, if you remember. Indians were going neck to neck with
Chicago White Sox.
Yeah. And I believe we were up a game or down a game when the whole thing stopped.
It was within a game to half a game, and the thing shut down.
Yeah.
And we were phenomenal. And
that was heartbreaking.
Really, that's when everybody fell in love with baseball. And then had the Browns pulled out at that time?
95.
So the Browns pull out, and then everybody has a love affair with the Tribe.
Indians. They did very well.
We went to the World Series, if I'm not mistaken, in
95,
and
then 97.
And it was
how many fell out? The 490 some straight games.
You can look that up, G.
So if you divide that by 82, what is that? That's quite a few years.
Oh my God, it was a run. Yeah. And here's the funny thing about in the history and why I'm getting to this is I think I knew who you were. We'd also go to probably what was the coolest, best gym at the time was Club Olympia. And
what a great place.
What a great place. How many? 455. So I knew you from there. I got to meet you. You were good friends with some of my friends, and we went to a baseball game together, which we probably shouldn't get into how
I remember that game. Yeah. Mike Kling's the first guy out of your group that I became friends with. And he said, Pete Lesko.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And he goes, there's a guy I think you'll really enjoy his company. He thinks just like you. And it ended up being you.
And Pete was one of them. I just think Pete thought we would hit it off because we were both Italian. It had to be 95, 96.
Yeah, it was probably
1995. Known you a long time.
I might have been 96, 97, right? Was I living on Hilliard or was I yet?
You were living on Hilliard. So
okay. That was 94.
So to dive into it, Hilliard, that was your first real new construction project.
Yeah.
But when and you had a full-time job, you're much younger. When did you get into real estate investing? Where did it start and what made you do this? Because you were very, you had a Great job.
That's a good question. I can't remember. I can tell you where the first house was. It was on 116th. It was a 4-family, 116th in Detroit. It was the same guy that owned Brothers Lounge. Somebody told me about this house, and I was like, I don't know. A friend of mine, I think, that lived at Sturbridge, moved out, and he had bought this double in Lakewood. And he's like, well, I can rent half, I can live in half, whatever. I don't know. I still remember this house was $75,000, and first time home buyer. I think it was 5% down. You had to live there.
This is your first?
This is my first
purchase
ever, and it had an attic that was unfinished too. So I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. But I bought it with, I think, 5% down, and my intention was to live in it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not living here. I'm not going to leave the pool, the hot tub. I had a lot of buddies that were at Sturbridge. I lived there for 5 years.
In Sturbridge?
Yeah, it was like,
I think I was there for 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So not Sturbridge, but Remington.
Yeah, and I enjoyed living there. I had as much fun there as I did when I was in college. It really was a great place.
What was so great about it is, like you said, you had the pool, but there were just so many young people living there, and met some amazing people. And you'd come to find out as you're at the pool. Oh my God, I didn't know you lived here.
Yeah, 2 of my lifelong friends, they were both in my wedding. I met while I was at Sturbridge.
No kidding.
Yeah, so just like Club Olympia, I think half that gym was at my wedding, and I talk to those guys to this day. I still have some of my best friends, my lifelong friendships, from those days early on. So I never ended.
You never lived in the.
I never lived in that. But I finished off the 2-bedroom upstairs. It was it had an old radiator, and but I gutted that thing, and it had the old lath, and it was dusty in there, and it was a good experience.
Were you hands-on at the time, and like you're trying?
Yeah, I mean, whatever I could, if I could handle it, and I learned a few things, by doing. You never, a lot of times you talk yourself out of doing something because you think you can't do it, but if you take a few minutes and you try to, you'll make a few mistakes, whatever, but you figure it out. And I'd be hanging lights, or I'd be putting cabinets in, or but I'm not really artistic, so if I do drywall finishing, back then it was pretty bad. I was never a good painter, but I learned a lot. There was good cash flow. It was, I made it a 5-unit.
Did it rent relatively easy?
It wasn't as easy back then to rent as it is now, but yeah, eventually, you'd always get it rented. But yeah, and then there was a couple firemen, that a guy that I went to Brunswick with, he approached me, says, "Hey, I hear you. Let me know when you're ready to sell it." I said, "Well, let me know when you're ready to buy it. You can, $125,000, you can take it."
What did you buy it for?
I paid $75,000, but I probably put, I don't know what I put in that attic to get it going. But yeah, I made, back then, if you made $20,000 or $25,000,
fantastic.
It was a big deal.
So that's your first one. You end up selling it. Then what do you do?
Well, I had that for about 5 years, and I started to buy. I had that one while I purchased a couple other ones. But what I did is, once I had that fifth unit up there, back then you could go to the bank and get it reappraised. You could pull that equity out, and then you could use that as your next down payment.
Which that game is over.
That game's over. But if I paid $75,000, I put another unit upstairs, and that thing appraises for $140,000.
So this is how you're building your empire.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how, when I was younger, if I could do it over again, I would have went to a different area. I would have went to Ohio City or Lakewood or.
Okay, so Ohio City, Tremont really wasn't anywhere close.
No, Tremont was
starting, but
my mentality was, hey, I'm in Lakewood. I mean, Westlake, Tremont's a little bit too far.
Right.
I can get to West Boulevard area a little
Right.
bit easier. And then the difference between Lakewood was you could buy a double in Lakewood for 75. You could buy one in Cleveland at that time for 50. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, it's a better value. But in reality is if you're putting, 5% down, 10% down, I'd rather put down 10 grand versus come up with another 5 grand, buy something in Lakewood. It would have been worth a lot more money.
So you keep buying more units, you're getting them rented. What was the formula? Did you know where you were going to stop? Because you're still at this point. You never hired out an outside crew. You're handling everything. You're collecting rents. You're meeting possible tenants, questionnaires, doing repairs at this time. Correct?
At that time or now? You're talking.
No. Let's go to that time.
Let's go to that time. Yes. Yeah. Now, there was certain guys that were in the area that somebody would give me a name of this repair guy. There was a Hillbilly Jim was his name. Great guy, could fix anything. Was inexpensive. It's just his workmanship wasn't the greatest, but his price was right. And then another tenant, I was renting to another guy. I was renting to his sister, and she said, "Hey, my brother does some handyman stuff, and I use him a couple times, and he ended up moving into one of my places, and to this day, I still use him. And he's actually been, the reason I've been able to hang in there and tolerate those properties for that long. But in the beginning, I was just chasing. If I could break even, I thought it was a good idea. I would do 15-year loans, and then if I needed money, I'd refinance everything. To get to the point where, when I moved over on Hilliard to get the money to buy that lot, I refinanced, the properties, and you go back anytime really and refinance. And, this is prior to the 08, when everything, the wheels fell off everything. But you could, they would almost help you accomplish what you were trying to accomplish. If I said, hey, I need to get 50 grand, where's the equity in some of these houses? They would go back, appraise it, you pull 10 out of this, 5 out of this, 8 over here. So that's how I bought that lot on Hilliard. Somebody else had subbed the construction of their house. I got a set of plans. It wasn't from Steve. This is before I met Steve.
Hold on. No, wait a second. You got those plans, and this is where I saw you for the first time. You came into the woods.
That's
it was
right.
It was my office. You come into there. You're looking at the plans, and you did a version of one of them, first floor master suite.
Yeah.
It's a nice plan. I mean, it wasn't anywhere near, but that's where I see you for the first time.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, if I'm being honest, I love those floor plans that you had. Real nice guy. I meet. You gave me, hey, do you have a set of, you gave me a sheet, and then I took it. But it was a guy in North Olmsted.
But it wasn't Schill.
It was not Steve Schill. It was just a guy that did it as a hobby. He was over in North Olmsted, and he was really inexpensive. And I gave him the dimensions of the lot, but I found him in the Plain Dealer back in the back when we get a hard paper. It was in the I think I found it in like the real estate section. Said I draw houses, So
That's fantastic.
That's.
Does Schill know this story?
I don't think he knows. He'd tell me it was just shelter anyway.
Yeah.
So
that was a great house. I ended up selling it for you years later. But did you ever keep that as a rental?
I did for about a year, I think.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to your. Wait, were you married with Tracy at Hilliard, or was Hilliard a bachelor?
So I was a bachelor when I moved in. I think I moved in there in '94. So I was a couple years. I might have been right in the beginning of that time.
How many rentals at this time before you started this project do you think you?
I might have had 6, 5.
In your heyday, what was the most you had? Or think of all the ones you've had.
I would peel some off when things got. If you remember, 05 was a good.
Yes.
That area was a good time. So, I would go. I'd go to the sheriff's auction if I would find. Back then you'd go into this live room. You had to bring $5,000. What I would do, I'd make a list. You get that. I would get it in the legal news. It was the weekly legal news. You would see which ones are coming up. So I would pick ones that I thought were going to be in an area that I knew. I'd drive by probably 10, 20. I'd focus on like 5. Would never go inside. I would just drive by them because occasionally could get inside. Matter of fact, I think I drug you guys into one.
We did.
That might have been an FHA house. Anyways, I wouldn't buy them at the auction all the time, but
Do you ever go to those anymore?
Because it's all online now.
It's all online. So there's no more live auctions.
No. Now, I've bid on them recently. The competition is crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah. I don't see much value at all anymore when I'm bidding online. If I kind of know the area. If I drive by, hey, this house should be $80,000 house. Well, it always ends up selling for $80,000. For me, you got to buy it. If it's an unknown, you got to buy it for 40 or 50 or.
Did you have a formula? I'm only buying in this area, or I know this area so well, so I'm comfortable with it. I know that it'll rent quick. Was that something you try to stick with?
Yeah. So I would stick. If it was Cleveland, I'd be the west side. So I knew like from West Boulevard to, West 85th. I wouldn't go out of that area. But I knew all the suburbs. To me, the suburbs were safe. So if it was, and it was always Cuyahoga County, because that's where the auction was. It could be Strongsville. It could be North Olmsted.
Well, you've dabbled in all those cities, haven't you? You've had stuff in Strongsville. You've had stuff in Olmsted Falls.
Yeah. The west side, if I could get to it within like a half hour.
It was good.
20 minutes, yeah. As I'm doing all this, there really was no plan. It was just like, hey, if, you feel like you got to be doing something extra to generate some cash flow or to improve your financial status. I know I bought some rentals after that. I had a mortgage broker. I would call her up and as soon as the phone rang, I'd say, hey, it's Craig. She said, well, what did you buy now?
So when you were buying them at the time, you go there, you put the initial deposit down, but you were able to finance when you were starting out.
Yeah. Back then you could finance. It was like 5% down, 10% down. It was that way until
2008.
After 2008, it was over. And at that point, I already had 3 kids and I was on like cruise control. And I did everything on 15 years. So there wasn't a lot of cash flow, and in 15 years then.
Now, okay, let's fast forward. He bought them with very little down. You get them on 15-year mortgages.
Yeah.
15 years comes around.
Boom. It's like, when you start it, you think 15 years is forever.
Forever.
And now,
15 years is a blink in an eye.
15 years whizzes by. So, you wake up one day and they were staged. So it was always like, okay, within a 5-year period, 5 get paid off, then another 5 and another 5. And it's like,
now you've got
where's all this getting?
Now you've got a big cash flow.
Yeah. What I tell everybody, and I told my son, and I would tell your kids, I tell everyone young that I can, try one out. First time home buyer, you can buy up to a 4-family with, I believe, 3 to 5% down now.
Yeah.
It just started.
It is for first time buyers.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it's the difference between your down payment for the 5% down or 3% down, come up with the extra $5,000 and buy something twice as nice, maybe in a better community, because your cash flow is going to be the same. Even if it's a $100,000 house or a $200,000 house, you're going to get a little more rent in a nicer area, but you're still going to have maybe $300 to $500 cash flow. But you're going to, at the end of the day, at the end of the game, at the end of the 15 years, you got a house that's worth double what it was. But anyways, to go back, I got ahead of myself.
Yeah, that's
for
fine.
The young guys. I always say try one. Try one. It's not going to kill you. Try one. See how you respond to it. Bad things are going to happen.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You just, you have to have a good disposition and a tolerance to, I want to call it buffoonery, because you're going to get buffoonery. I don't care where you're at. It's just going to come up if you have rental property. But if you take the right attitude that, hey, something's going to go wrong. The drain tile is going to collapse in the front yard. You're going to have to dig it up at some point. A roof's going to leak. You're going to have tenants that are going to stick you with 3 months rent before you have to evict them. But I think you try one, see if it's something that you like, and if you can break even in that area for 15 years, it's at the end of the road, you have an asset and you have some cash flow, and I think it's a good experience too. You're forced to learn, some personal finance. You're forced to learn interest rates. You're forced to learn how to fix some stuff. And then if you can tolerate that and you're making a couple bucks, then go do another one. And then you get to the point where I'm working a full-time job, and then this is what I can handle on the side. A lot of people don't make it to the end
of the 15 years.
Yeah, they get burned out, and I can see it. It's happening.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah, and listen, if I didn't find a good, this guy lives in one of my units. I take good care of him. He takes good care of me. But he's the guy, like if something bad happens, somebody's toilet backs up or, furnace goes out or whatever. And this guy's taught himself. He can research, thanks to the internet too. He'll research a certain brand of furnace and he can figure out what it needs by the codes. He goes up to Mini Hart and he buys that piece, calls me, I call him my credit, without him, it would have been a lot harder or more expensive, because you got to find people that can help with those things. But in the long run, somebody's saying, what's your return on investment? It's north of 10%, usually it's like a 20% return on your money when you're, rents have gotten much better. In those Cleveland houses, I do a lot of Eden, which is like a Section 8, and I do some Section 8. It's a good program now. They've boosted up their rental numbers. You have to have an inspection every year, and you have a certain standard that you've got to hit. And it's just like anything else. You got some great tenants. You got some bad tenants. You got some in between. But as far as a personal finance, I think it's a good addition to whatever else somebody else is doing, as long as you can, have the right attitude. And, fortunately, I've always had it gets me in trouble, but I've always had kind of a laid back disposition. I try not to get too upset about
No, you don't.
anything, because stuff happens. I know it's going to happen. When it does, at this point, I just laugh about it. I could sit here, I could do a 3-hour show just on stuff that I've seen and experienced.
So was there any point when you were younger that you thought, well, I know I got this great job, maybe I'll just hold a huge portfolio? Could you have done that and not worked had you kept grinding and buying?
Well, I think if you, and I've had apartment buildings with a buddy. We had a couple. The cash flow was good, but that's what you have to do. You have to commit to the
upfront costs.
Yeah, it's a bigger commitment, and then here again, if you're doing single family homes, you got to be at 30 years or even doubles. It would have to be a 30-year loan because to do it full time, you got to have a cash flow that you can live on. Obviously, if they're paid for, that's a different situation. But nobody's got
at that age.
Yeah. So there was guys that had 70, 80 units that I'd meet. I'd be at eviction court and I would be talking to somebody. I'm like, how many units do you have? And the guy would say, well, I got 80. I'm like, holy shit. But he's doing that full time.
Full time.
And you really have to put the time in. You have to research everything. You have to go to the auction back then it would have been, now everything's online, but the competition is,
it's
like
crazy.
I said before, it's crazy, but I don't know. I can't even remember if I thought about that or not. I just always,
What is the biggest lesson you've learned from being a landlord?
No matter where you have a property, buffoonery can find you. I had a nice, newer, single family house in Westlake. A buddy of ours moved to Houston. I bought his house and I was renting it for years. And, I rented to a guy that owned his own company, a corporate guy, was making a ton of money, and he quit paying his rent, for 3-4 months. I ended up having to evict him, left the house a mess, destroyed it.
I was there with you. I've never seen any. I was there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So
had the sheriff show up?
Yeah. 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 You were there.
I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I had never experienced anything like that in my life.
Yeah, that's nothing either. I mean, yeah.
And you've had
so-
worse than that?
Oh God. I mean, yeah, I had one eviction. I mean, there was I think we caught 70 mice. And I didn't, you used to watch Tom and Jerry. You'd see these mouse holes, and I thought it was just like, okay. I'd never seen a mouse hole before, except for the cartoons. I went in this house, and I hadn't been in there, for a long time. It was a Section 8 tenant, and something happened. She lost her Section 8, and I waited like 3 months. Then I went to court for the eviction, and they said, well, you can't. She filed Chapter 11. She's filed bankruptcy. And I says, well, what does that mean? They go, well, you can't evict her. I says, well, what do I do now? They said, well, you got to wait. I had to wait like another 6 months. And in the meantime, when I finally got her out another 6 months later, in matter of fact, she hired a lawyer that I didn't know she was bankrupt. I had a lawsuit against me for evicting somebody that was in bankruptcy. I finally got this woman out, and I mean, it was like 2 40-yard dumpsters of junk, and then on top of it, I mean, there was holes everywhere. We caught 75 mice. Wherever if a mouse was up, I'm like, what are these brown arches against the wall and stuff? Well, the handyman guy's like, well, it's when a mouse, that's his path. They're dirty and they rub against the wall, and they made it was like a piece of artwork that the mice. But I mean, there was probably 15 holes that need to be patched up. I mean, filthy bugs. I mean, I've had in another eviction, there was I had 2 pit bulls that I had to call. I mean, these places are filthy on top of it, but there was a couple pit bulls that I had to call, and then I had to pay to have the pit bulls removed. That was, and then I went and checked on another house, and in the basement there was those like ponds that yard ponds that you would. They were in the basement full of water. There was a crocodile. I evicted this guy. There was a crocodile in one. There was an alligator in another, and there was a frickin' snapping turtle in the bathtub. Bad stuff's gonna happen. It can happen anywhere. And I've bought and sold and but I've gotten it to a comfortable level where, hey, this is what I think I can tolerate, or my guy can tolerate to take care of, and on the side of that, one new build or a project house a year.
Sounds like you've had a nice run on the rentals. How many rentals do you have today?
I still have, if I count the Airbnb, I've got 16, 17,
And what was the most at one point?
At one time, I think I had in the 30s.
So you've kept your best rentals, obviously, sold a lot of the other rentals, kept your best ones. And I know you started getting into home flipping. And then on top of that, I know that now you do new construction, which, by the way, you do absolutely beautiful work.
Oh, thank you.
Of the 3, what's your favorite?
Well, it's definitely not the rental part of it. Now, I do like, now that they're paid off, I do, the cash flow is nice. New construction is, I like it because it's exciting. You start with something, and it's nice to watch that whole thing come together.
Yeah, it's the process.
So, that's kind of neat. But and really, some of these rehabs have been fun too, because you take something that needs a lot of work and doesn't have a lot of character, and you make it into a cool place.
What's the secret when you find something? Is it a rental? Is it going to be a flip? Or am I going to tear it down and build?
Well, I think right away when you're buying something, whether it's going to be, a rental, a tear down, or a flip, or I think the only place you can do a tear down, and I don't even think you could have done it. Well, I guess you could have done it in the last 5 years. Bay Village, locally here, where I'm comfortable, is Bay Village, Rocky River. And, I think Westlake's a safe spot now too, to do that. But, if really you go out and you find the worst house that nobody wants to live in or buy, or maybe they want to live in it, but it needs a lot of work, or usually it's a foundation issue. It needs so much work that it warrants a tear down. We've grabbed a couple of those in Bay Village, and they always work out. It seems like Bay Village, no matter where you build, it's a good,
It's an amazing community.
yeah, it's a good. And I'd say the same thing about Rocky River, but Rocky River, I don't think you can find anything.
It's so hard. How about how competitive it is now? I mean, it seems like everybody and their brother is a home flipper,
Yeah,
or they're buying
yeah.
property, and it just drove the cost.
Yeah, it's the other thing. I mean,
think about a couple of those houses we went to this summer. We'd walk through, and they're terrible shape. Whether the foundation is shot, you get these giant trees that that have wrecked everything. The house is completely deteriorated. But we'd walk through, and there are 50 people besides us
yeah,
going through these houses,
yeah,
and they're
yeah,
25, 30 offers.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's changed a lot. When I got back into it, it was like 2018. I think, I was getting a little bored. Tracy was getting a little bored, and I says, "Hey, would you want to?" She's always watching that HGTV. And,
It's changed the game.
yeah. So I said,
It's changed everything.
I says, "Listen, instead of watch this, do you want to do one?" I go, I used to do these. I did a couple before. And I built. I had built that house on Hilliard, and I had built our house. I said, we can do it again. We've just been away from the game for a while.
Tracy was the game changer. I hate to tell you. She was.
She really is good with, colors and design.
And she's got her pulse on what today's buyers want in a house. If I go into your new houses, I mean, I always compliment the hell out of you. I'm like, Craig, this is so nice. All these features that you have done. I mean, there's a lot of thought that obviously you two have to put into them. That whole third floor you had on that last Bay house, some of the built-ins you guys do, the pantries, just the little design features that Tracy incorporates and everything. She's top notch.
Yeah, she's
top notch.
She is very good with that detail,
But that's everything. I mean, if you appeal to that buyer, they're going to buy your house. I mean, you've never had anything that has really sat around.
No, I mean that. Like I said, that first one on foot, we took that little.
Oh, it was awesome.
Cape Cod and did a couple additions, and there was an old carpenter buddy that helped me with that. I mean, he came up with a few things even after I had Steve go through it and give me some ideas that really made that thing pop. The second new build we did in Bay over on Juneway. Actually, Steve was with me that day. I says, "Hey, let me check on this tenant hasn't paid me rent in a couple months." Drive to Juneway. It was in January, and we pull up in the driveway, and all the windows are open. I says, "Why are the windows open? It's January." It was like today. It was like 20 degrees out. I opened the front door, and it was like a car wash. I mean, water's everywhere.
Oh my God!
And I ran to the back. I knew where the main shutoff was. Like the ceiling had already come down, the walls had come down, and I had to reach. Like I could barely reach the shutoff because the ceiling in that room had collapsed. Everything was covered in ice, and I walked. I was soaked. I was shivering. Steve was like, "What the f going on?" I says, "Well," I said, "they left the windows open, and it was hot water heat, and the pipes burst everywhere." So I says, "All right." I said, "Start drawing a house here." I said, this is coming
So
down.
that's how that Juneway came.
Yeah.
I did not know that story. I had no idea. I just thought you just tore it down.
I got forced into, so we got the lot dimensions, and he came up with a great floor plan. I mean, it was
unbelievable.
Yeah. And I didn't even make an insurance claim. I just knocked it down. Didn't even call the insurance company. Knocked that house down. And
now I remember when you did it, it was probably one of the first and one of the bigger homes in probably a three street vicinity. And I remember you being like, I don't know. I mean, I'm nervous.
I was a nervous wreck.
I can't believe this. It's up here. And today that house, you couldn't touch it for what you sold it for.
No, I mean that was what was that 2019? 2019. So
2019, before COVID,
yeah,
before
so
things went insane.
it was the end of 2019. So that was really it was really only 4 years ago. But that house would sell for probably
Not
$200,000-$300,000
more. Yeah,
more
it'd be
than
in the nines.
yeah. So what do we sell it for? 675.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that thing always pops up, you know. Yeah, I think
It
it's
would
at
be in the nines.
930.
It was a
Yeah.
fantastic floor plan. You knocked everything out of the park. It was well built, quality, killer location. And now there's so much of that going on. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So much of that going on.
Yeah. So that's the challenge. If you can find, I guess now, if you can find a house, a tear down between 150 and 200, then it would be, as much as I hate to give Steve Schill credit on,
Oh.
on some of his stuff.
No, that was both of those were just 5-star plans.
You know, you hit all the things that everybody wants: mudroom, big pantry, 3 bathrooms, and a half bath now, a den, open floor concept, of course, 9-foot ceilings. You know, we always finish the basements just to give some extra square footage. But that third floor, I didn't even, I didn't even think of that, and nobody would even know it's there. But it's
that set that apart.
Best. Yeah. And then Tracy comes in, does her thing. She's got finished carpenter guy that does all those little.
I
things.
love the stuff that he does.
Yeah, he does a great, over the stove hood. He'll do, floating shelves anywhere you want it. They'll do shiplap vertically and horizontally in certain areas.
The other thing you're really big on, and I know I've told you this before, is curb appeal. I think that's what sets you apart. You're just not afraid to do the extra little details, whether it was the corbels on the garage or just detail with a covered front porch. You always do that, and I compliment the hell out of you for doing it, because I've seen so many people that do this, and they're not about that. Let me just see if I can get it done and get it flipped.
Well, I appreciate that, and there's a cost to all that too.
Of course there is. Cost, time. I mean,
yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, but you get to put, you're doing it, and you're like, well, it needs this, so let's go ahead and do it. We'll spend the money. I can't let things go unless they look right.
You have pride.
So, luckily we've got like a good group of people that it's usually the same guys that are helping me out.
I'm glad you said that, and that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. You now have what you would call your crew, and who you want to use on your carpenters, your electricians, your plumbers.
Yeah, for the most part, plumber to the electrician, roofer. Somebody needs a little extra money. Hey, Craig, I spent more time. I never argue with him. I pay him because I want him to pick up the phone next time.
I know Gianni has this question, and you kind of answered it. I think you may have said this, but for somebody that's young, and let's talk today in 2024, not when you started out. Like, what would you say to a Gianni, a Dante, a Gennaro that is going to do this? What would be your advice? Are you looking for a rental? Would you try a flip?
Well, when I was younger, I bought a house on West Boulevard. We got it down to 65. And then I went in and I saw that the basement it was bugging me. I'm like, listen, offer them 55 and tell them that the basement needs to be repaired. Well, they accepted that offer at 55. Now, this is a house on West Boulevard. 3 bedrooms on each side. It's a huge house, slate roof. I mean, even this was in 98. So even then, that was a great buy. So those two came to me and like, hey, we thought about this. We want that house. You walk away, we'll give you 10 grand and we'll buy it. I don't know. I think I asked my uncle, I says, hey, what would, this is, the situation. He goes, well, he just said, he goes, the worst thing you can do is do nothing. So his point was, hey, just do something and it'll work itself out. I think, what I can tell, I tell my kids, I would tell anybody, just don't be complacent. Everybody's going to talk you out of a situation, and you have to experience it to realize whether it's something that you want to do or can do, and it's not going to kill you. Everybody's like, oh, it's going to be too expensive. You're going to have to evict somebody. So what? It's, what, you get to a point, if you don't think it's for you, then you sell it. You might make a couple bucks. You're going to learn so much. You might find out that, hey, I can do I can handle 5 of these, and it's a nice extra income. And if you're, you know, and I don't know how I did because it was a long road, but boom, next thing you know, 15 years has passed, and and then that cash flow becomes, becomes significant when it's a numbers game.
You have all these rentals, they're paid off, and you didn't have a job. You're going to sleep good at night.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah,
but here's the biggest difference. And I know you, and I know you very well. We're dear friends. And you touched on this, is you have a personality where you don't let the little things get to you. They don't. You could get stressed out over it, but you're not that person that gets bent out of shape when something goes wrong. You're very positive, upbeat. You know you're going to get through it. You could bitch about it a little bit, but not everybody has that personality.
Yeah,
and that's, I mean, good on you.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
But I mean, I know so many of your horror stories.
Yeah.
You've been burnt by tenants, by people, and shit on.
Yeah.
But you just keep rolling. You're a turn the other cheek guy, and so kudos to you, dude.
If you live life, it's stuff like that's gonna happen, and with you waste a lot of energy if you let it get to you, and just even on this last project I'm doing in Bay Village, I was having trouble finding a plumber. I found a guy on Craigslist. He came in. It was the 22nd in December. So I was leaving. I says, hey, I'm not going to be back till after Christmas. He goes, well, I'm coming tonight. I'm going to stay tonight. I'm going to work tomorrow. That was Christmas Eve. He goes, can you pay me in advance, like $500? I gave him $500. Plus, there was a lot of copper that I had eliminated. We moved something, and he took the copper, and he must have left right after me and never, quit answering my phone call. So it still happens, it still happens to this day.
I'm sorry.
And we were laughing about it. I'm like, this guy, and but I knew as soon as he came in the door, I'm like, oh, this guy's, he's a.
Well, Tracy always says that about you.
Yeah, she said my worst character is I trust too many people. Sometimes it's you want to believe the best in everybody, and it just doesn't.
I always think everybody's like me, and my wife says to me all the time, nice guy, bad judge of character. And it is. It is.
Yeah, and I think I'm a good judge of character, but
I think I am too. It's just I wouldn't do stuff to people, but that's just you and I. But.
Yeah, and a lot of times I get a spidey sense, but and I did on this one too. I just didn't believe that, hey, it's Christmas Eve, this guy, but yeah, I mean it every so often I get burned, because I'm too, I leave my guard down. I don't do my due diligence or research. And,
I get it.
I shoot from the hip, and I don't think I'm going to change at this point.
Right.
So
you get set in your ways.
I got.
So do you think we answered that question or no? Like, did he give you your advice? Just do it.
Oh, I didn't finish that.
Okay. So.
Well, if you have more to add to it, let me know now, and I'll throw it in there. Actually.
All right. So yeah, and another point I would, and I said it earlier is just try one, and like I said, if it doesn't feel right, I think. But if you look at, I think you have to do. Everybody says you got to do a little bit of everything. Hey, make sure you save for your retirement, make sure you save for your kids' college. But I think real estate, no matter how you get into it, is a and it's tougher now because everything's so much more expensive.
Unbelievable.
But I would still say there's no other place. If you go where it's still cheap, west side of Cleveland, Lorain, Ohio, you can still buy a double or even a single family. I like single families because, Section 8 on a 3-bedroom is probably paying $1,600 now. 4-bedroom, it's probably 8 pushing 17, 18. So my point is, your return on your money is still good, really good there for if you want to
In
invest
single family.
or even a double. Like you can still buy a double if you look hard enough. You can find one for 100, on that West Boulevard area, maybe even sometimes cheaper. I mean, they're out there. It's going to need a little bit of work. If something's in a better shape, maybe 120, or a single family you can get. And I like single families because you don't have two tenants fighting with each other. But, if I was a young guy and I had, if you've got $5,000 saved, it might even be 3% where you can.
It's 3.
Yeah. So 3%, I mean, buy a double on, West 85th for $3,000, and you're never going to get, and it's, I think, first time home buyer. So I think, I don't know how you beat the return on that investment. Get it fixed up, apply for the Section 8 or Eden, which I like that program better. That's a city program, Eden. They seem to be a little better staffed. They're still both, great programs for these people that are on it. And there's certain parameters, they kind of keep you in check. They'll make sure that your house meets all the standards and so forth. So there, and I even, just from being in Lorraine recently, I think there's still some value there. Lorraine, Amherst, they've got their own Lorraine County, Section 8 program too. But I think the return on your $3,000 to $5,000 is phenomenal. And even if you only do one, but that's a good way to get started to see if it's something that you can tolerate.
That's good advice. I have one more real estate question for you. And I know you've just kind of started getting into it, but how much do you like the Airbnb concept?
I love the Airbnb concept. Didn't know much about it at all up until June when I started it. Bought a house on the lake, and fixed it up. It wasn't in bad shape. It was built in 2003, but modernized everything and just made it, I let Tracy go. She picked the colors and the furniture and it's a roundhouse. It's got a lot of character. It's right on the water. The views from everywhere, are great. And, a friend of ours has that Airbnb up in Catawba. If it's a vacation rental or if you got a view, I think it makes a
big difference.
I think the fact that I'm on the lake makes a big difference on how quickly,
But it's been very successful.
Yeah, it's better than expectations. So
will you continue to do this?
Yeah, if I can find the right one. I think, like I said, there's got to be something unique about it. It's got to be, mine's on the water. I think if I found another one on the water, I think that makes all the difference in the world. I wouldn't be a street over. I think it would be a failure. Or be in a good location like downtown Cleveland where you're right in the middle of walking distance to restaurants.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or a place where they're holding a wedding or if you have an area you can make a bigger room where somebody can have like a small wedding. I've had a couple weddings in my backyard. I didn't even know about it. The neighbor told me.
Are you serious?
Small weddings, yeah. They're like, hey, there was a priest here and I have a Ring camera, but I didn't pay for the recording part of it, so I missed part of that.
Last question. All right, my friend. What is your blueprint for success in your life?
I really haven't thought about that, but you just have to grind and try different things, and that's a good question.
That's the name of the show.
Yeah, I know it's the name of the show. Don't be afraid to try stuff because everybody's negative and says it's too hard and, you can't do it. I mean, I've always been, like I said, I always shoot from the hip. I mean, you've known me for a long time. There was a period when I wasn't doing houses. I was buying old convertible cars. I was buying them. I would redo the interiors, get them running right, put a new top on them. I had a top guy. I was flipping like 10, 15 cars a year. Everybody thought I was out of my mind. I'd buy them sight unseen, either on the internet or by the phone. I had some great, cool cars. I'm always doing something to try to generate some extra income. And then, whenever I do anything, if I flip a house or if I'm flipping cars or, whatever I'm doing for that extra money, whenever you come into it, just pretend that you don't have it, invest it in something, invest it in a piece of real estate or, put it in your IRA or put it in the kids 529. Yeah. Pretend that you don't have it and let that kind of the Malcolm's Forbes, hey, capitalist tool, always take money and let it work for you in some aspect, whether it's, a savings program that's protected by taxes or, investing in real estate or, any of the other stuff. I tell my kids to try to look at their vehicles as, like I do. It's any car I've ever had, no matter how nice it is, after a month, I'm already bored with it.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. And so, I always tell them, hey, just pick a car that you really like, get a used one. And, because that's something that, it just appreciates. Unless it's a collector car, then that'll make you money. So, I never really, I think I always, it's always, I'm like you, it's family first. What can I do to improve my family's position and, focus on that. And then you always come last, which is okay. It doesn't,
You're selfless.
Yeah, I'm always comfortable. So if, I'm comfortable if everybody's happy. So I don't know if that's a blueprint, but look at everything as an adventure and don't be afraid to try to do stuff. And because no matter what, time always, kind of works it out. You make a bad investment, you overpay for something, time usually takes care of it. Just ride the wave. And, in 08, I think I was so upside down on all those rentals. They went from being worth, if they're worth 100, everything was worth half. So,
right.
And you're
only if you sell, though. I mean, they
right.
can. It's you're only losing when you sell.
Right.
So
rents didn't change.
Nope.
So that's what
just the values did.
Yeah. But I had people say, "Oh, geez, are you gonna like walk away?" I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna. No, I'm gonna ride it out." And here we are today. It's not, it's gotten much better, and it's always historically that's always how it ends up being. So you just have to have faith in that, and don't be afraid.
There you go, man. Well, we have taken up, man, a lot of your day, and you're such a good friend for doing this.
It was fun. But
all right, buddy. Well,
all right, appreciate it.
Johnny, thank you. That was fun.
Johnny,
Appreciate everyone.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to follow us on social media at MDV The Blueprint on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We post a ton of great content. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you never miss out on an episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.